This is Short Hammer. It is the 31st of January 2021, and this is Trading Zones. Week was insane. I think there are a lot of people talking about what happened with GameStop, and there are many different perspectives, right? So no matter which side of that you fall on, what you have to realize is that there are risks in the market, right? And it's an old Godfather quote that Don Corleone says that applies, I think, in this scenario. This is the business that we chose, right? And sometimes that business is fair, sometimes that business is unfair. Um, there's a lot of unfairness in trading, but it's trading, right? And the way that you deal with the unknowable sometimes, and the way that you deal with um, just if you disagree with the structure of how it works, is you manage your risk. That goes for hedge funds, that goes for retail traders, that goes for all of us, that goes for life. Manage your risk. And I may mention other parts of this later in this video, but I'm not going to really get into that because for us right now, that's not relevant. What we're looking at are technical setups, and the market sold. So the question is there more selling in store? I think there may be. This is why. For anyone that was on the wrong side of the tickers that were being spiked, the problem that you run into is that you may run into a a liquidity issue where you may have to sort of put in more margin because now there's more risk to the positions you may have on if you're short. So what does that mean? For example, if let's say I'm a just regular retail trader, right? And I happen to be, let's say I was short GME and this thing spikes. Man, there could be a margin call because now, I'm so underwater on that based on where I'm short and how heavy I am. I got to put more money into my broker account, right? So if I say, hey, I'm only going to risk 100,000 or 200,000 in the market, and I have those have that money allocated to other investments, other tickers. So I might be in Netflix, I might be in Amazon, I might be in Microsoft, I might be in all these other things. I have to liquidate those positions, right? Let's say I'm up on the year. I have to liquidate those positions to be able to meet the margin requirements I may have for being short GME. It's just too much risk, right? So I'm not going to go deep into that at all. There are plenty of videos that you'll find on YouTube of people that have actually researched and can go deep into that. I'm just giving you some broad strokes. So what I would expect, my thesis, right, of what I think is that for those people that had to liquidate to meet potential margin requirements, um, they're not going to jump right back in to Netflix or NVIDIA or whatever those tickers are that they sold a little bit to get out of, which is what I think happened, right? I think people had to sell certain things to get out of them to be able to cover those margins, or they saw the risk on as far as those tickers spiking, and some people just wanted to get out, right? And um, I think that they'll buy it lower. I think the market will go lower. I don't think that GME or AMC or any of those tickers is the only reason why the market pulled back. I think for 2021, a lot of people were looking for a reason to sell and looking for a reason to exit their positions at highs. And I think a lot of tickers have sort of run their course, and there's only so much juice left, right? And sometimes the juice isn't worth the squeeze, like it's not worth the risk. So it's better to wait for things to pull back and for the market to cool a little bit and buy lower. That's just logic, right? So whatever the excuse is for people to exit and to sort of get a lower position that they may feel has less risk on it, that's what I believe people are going to do. So if we're looking at MES, we definitely pull back from those highs, right? And right now we're at the 3700s, just right below. And why is that important? The 3700s was an area that we spent, a considerable amount of time around that area. Look at these, look at how much time we spent near the 3700s. It's magnetic, right? Now, if we sell through, below that, we have the 3691s, the 3667s, and the 3652s, right? But what we need to do, let's really go back. If we sell, and we'll see if that's the case, then we may actually be headed down around the 3500s. That may be where we're going. We may go lower. So we have to see, and what you want to watch for is um how much how much volume or activity do you see in defensive stocks. That means that are there inflows, money flowing into real estate, money flowing into consumer staples, money flowing into bonds, money flowing into what am I forgetting? Energy. Just look for those sectors where people usually tend to put their money when the market is volatile. And that's what I will be looking for. And if you see money fleeing to defensive sectors, and you also see the dollar begin to rise, just be aware things can get interesting. So be careful if you're thinking this is a dip buy opportunity and you wouldn't buy. Be sure, and what you want to watch for is how much volume is entering in if we head up, and on the down on the pullbacks, when we go down, if we make lower lows, how much volume is there? Is there more volume on the sell side and less volume on the buy side, or more volume on the buy side and less volume on the sell side, right? So that's what you want to watch for as this market tries to balance out. I believe we're headed lower. I believe the market's been overheated for quite some time, so we'll see. It was just looking for an excuse to pull back. But you have these levels. We've been mentioning these for weeks: 3667, 3652, 3610, 3587, 3565, just 3534, 3525, 3498 to the upside. If we bounce, what we'll be watching for is, do we get through the 3714s, get to the 3750, 3772, 3817s? We'll see. I don't think. I think this upcoming week we have Amazon, we have Google earnings. I don't think there will be enough, and also Chipotle. I don't think there'll be enough juice in those, in whatever those earnings are, to reverse the potential market sentiment that's taking hold right now. So just be careful. And I'm going to blaze through these because I'm trying to get in the bed. Crazy weekend, had a bunch of fun, but so the Russ pulled back. You all see that financials pulled back. Goldman Sachs pulled back wonderfully. And I believe there may be more to the downside. What we see here is, look at this candle structure here, going back to the beginning of January. If we sell through that, you see the next area is 2019, then 2008, 1990, then 1962. If we catch a bid here, the 2057s, watch out for the 2081s. And what you'd want to see is a break back over this and bullish action above this to run us into the 2111s. Is that possible? Yes, right? Because this is a very sharp sell off, right? And the candles on the 4 hour look more bearish than not. So it looks like we may make a lower low. But what you have to realize is that we did see a little bit of a I'll say a bounce above the 2057 area. So we want to see if we sell through that area, if we gap down through that area, and then what happens at the 2019s will also be important. If this selling continues, right, nonstop, what you usually want to wait for is a pullback before you get short. If you happen to jump short and this thing is going down and you're trying to ride that wave down, make sure you don't go full size and you have the ability to be able to average on if it pulls back on you a little bit, right? So just watch for your setups and watch for your plays. And just because we saw this strong dip on Friday, And also kind of Thursday too. Just because we saw this strong dip doesn't mean all of a sudden the market is bearish. Don't assume. Wait, wait for your clues and your keys and see how things play out. And watch the financials and see how they respond, right? That's really important. Don't try to sort of front run or preempt what you think may be a sell off. The market can fake you out, pull back up into the 2081s or even higher, and then roll over and sell through. And maybe your risk doesn't allow you to hold on that pullback. And then on the drop, you may doubt that it may not go through. You may hold off on getting back in, and this thing could just roll. So just be patient and wait for your setups. Next up is Amazon. And this thing gave us a nice little push and broke the 3340s. So we had 3370s, 3380s, but it didn't hold. Rolled over the next day, right? And so as we sold, there was just no buyers stepping in to drive us back to the upside. And when you see this pull back right into the 3220s, which is the top of the channel we were in for months, that's an area where if you may want to begin to step in with a long play, expecting a bounce from that area, right? But what you would do in that sense, so many people that trade Amazon have wide stops. So you'd watch this dip through, and on that pierce through, you'd play a long position. But what you have to realize is the market can roll over on you and sell nonstop, right? So because this is a multi-month level, that's the reason why you may consider, if your account permits, getting long here, or if you don't want to get long shares, or you don't want to get long naked options, you can get long a vertical here, right? And your risk is whittled down to the width of the strikes, right? And the next day, what do we see? We see a pop, and this pop back up, you'd exit. You wouldn't trust that all of a sudden there's now a buying opportunity off of this level, because the market has a I'd say a more bearish than not sentiment. Not meaning the market is bearish, but it has a more of a selling sentiment and an uncertainty around the GME situation, the SEC being involved, and exactly what's going on there, right? So you'd play that, right? But if you look at the lower time frames, you had multiple entries and exits that you could have played that gave you, just great, I'd say great opportunities to get in and play this down and play this up and play this down, or just play this down. If you waited for the pullback into this area, then you could have waited for this pullback and waited for, on the lower time frame, um lower lows, right? And also watching the cues for a setup to say, hey, at this point I believe the cues are up against resistance, and I'm going to go ahead and follow this down. I won't get into that too much, but next week, Amazon does have earnings, I believe. And so what you want to watch for is, do we see a spike that blows the top off of 3380s? How much of a spike do we get if Amazon reports well and the market is excited about what they report? Be aware that based on the current market sentiment, regardless of what Amazon reports, the response to it, to the upside, may be a little bit more measured. It's almost like a wet blanket that's thrown on the earnings for this week, I believe. You got to be very, very careful. People are going to be very hyper aware of risk, right? So you do want to watch this. But we are back with inside the channel. And usually if we're back inside the channel, my expectation is that there's a strong potential that we may drift to the lower portion of this channel. If Amazon doesn't blow everything out of the water, then we may drift down here, and there may be what we call that. I'd say just the sentiment may give us a drift lower. We'll see how that plays out. I'm not predicting earnings because you can't, but I'll be watching to see if we get a reaction to the downside on Amazon. Not necessarily because the earnings are bad, but just because the market sentiment may not be very positive right now. So we have to see how that works out. For those that are counting on Amazon and Google to save the market and bring on a rally, I don't know if there's enough good juju in Amazon and Google and Chipotle, as good as those burritos may be, to drive this market back to the upside. But watch the 3220s, right? And if we cannot regain the 3260s, which I don't believe we will be able to do, I do believe we will be drifting down. We did hold the 3190s multiple days. You saw the dips into that. The buyers did step in. If we roll through, eyes will be on 3142s. Then down here around the 3080s. And if we happen to crack that and we don't hold the 3068s, then guys, we might be seeing the 30s, 20s, and we might see even a dip down into the 2950s, which we have been waiting for. We'll see how this shakes out, but definitely these are the levels to watch on Amazon and see how it reacts to earnings, right? So just be careful. Netflix. What we mentioned last time is what we wanted to watch for was a pullback into the 550s, into that area, and see if the buyers would step in. The initial test, we did see a slight pullback up into the 567s, but what we would have needed to see, right? Because this area, let's scroll out. We definitely had an extensive conversation about this, right? We needed there to be buying on this pullback into any of these areas, right? So the 550s, this is where we want our buyers to step in. And then what we would want, the reaction that we would want is for on this pullback, the buyers step in, and over the corresponding days for us to get a higher high and a run into the 600s. That was a bullish setup for Netflix to go on a parabolic, 100-point run over the next month or so. That didn't happen. Instead, we saw selling. Now, did that have everything to do with Netflix? No, right? There are other market, I'll say market situations at play, right? Market realities at play. And so what we've seen is we pull back into the 550s. We came back and we cracked. Once we cracked the 550s, that means that the buyers, that previous supply had not become a demand pocket, right? That resistance has not become a buy zone or support zone, right? So we sold through. So if you miss this, when we dipped, you would wait for the pullback into that area and you would fade that to the downside. And that's how you wait for your setups, right? Because clearly the buyers we need to get us above this area. They didn't. And now we're selling. So we are currently at the 530s. And if we get below the 529s, what I'll be watching for is the 507s, the 504s, the 512s, and the 513s may provide a little bit of of a a fight, maybe a small demand pocket there, but there may be a gap down and this selling may get vicious, right? Look at this long term, um, I'll say support line or trend line that's, it was broken here. Try to regain it here. You'd want that to hold. That's not holding. We're below that. We're drifting down. If we continue to sell, if we make a lower low than we made here, that 515s, if we sell through there, then I would be watching out for the 490s down here. And I'll definitely be extending this line. And if that sells through, watch out for the 460s. We'll see how this plays out. But we would definitely want the buyers to step in and drive us back above the 535s, back above the 542s, and to get steady buying through the 550s and squeeze and pop the top into the 600s. That's what you want if you're bullish, right? You want this thing to buy back up. We'll see how this plays out. Watch these levels. Um, if I was to predict which way this is going to go, I'll say watch for Monday setup. Right? If you see the market trying to put a bid beneath this, and you don't see inflows into defensive sectors, then there may be a chance that we could buy this back up. Maybe it was just a flash, quote unquote, flash crash, but that we dropped here, bought up, and that we sold back down again. That to me is slightly worrisome if you're bullish. And what you want to watch is, do we sell back through these bottoms around the 515s, 516s, this flare down? That's what I'll be watching for on Netflix. NVIDIA, we did mention watch the upper 540s and these 536s. And when we could not get bullish and remain bullish above these upper 540s, that was a sign that, hey, the buyers are not with us here, right? And the overall market sentiment didn't help, and we sold. And you could look at this as a channel from these 5 teens all the way up into these 540s, right? These 536s to 540s. That could be an area that we'd be watching. If we roll through these lower 5 teens, I'll definitely keep an eye out at the 504s, the 490s, but the 475s may be on deck if this selling becomes pronounced. Be careful in all these names. For me personally, I definitely wanted this to be bullish above the upper 540s. Then we could see an extension into the 560s, maybe even the 570s, the 580s. But that's just not what happened. Even tech has just not, even though we had that run up for earnings, other than that run up, tech has been, you know, I'll say lackluster, right? You definitely could have your movement, but it's been lackluster. But be careful on NVIDIA. Be very, very, very careful on these tickers because, um, see, when is earnings? Earnings is the 23rd of February. So depending on what happens with this selling, if this selling is sharp enough, NVIDIA could be due for a nice run back up on earnings. We have to see. Facebook. So Facebook, we mentioned the 240s, rolled this bad boy up. Look at the hitch here, caught that, kept going, broke this level. You wanted it to be super bullish above the 280s. We looked like we wanted to be. Then we pulled right back through, had a flare up, but then the selling came in, right? So what are we watching for here on Facebook? No matter how much Facebook sells, and we bounced it here at the 254. You see our line here. Let me see if I could make this. No. That doesn't look as good as I thought it would. There we go. A bounce here around the 254s. And so what we want to see now is if we see continued selling down through here, watch these 247s into the 244s. In fact, let me draw a quick line here because I want us to keep an eye on this area. And perfect. Yeah, perfect. Watch this area right up in here because this is interesting. And I'll pretty this up a little bit later. If we don't hold this, 240s, 238s, these lower areas are going to open up down to these 238s, these 236s, maybe even to 228s can open up. I know it looks kind of it's the sky is falling. The market can easily step in here. The buyers can step in and run this back to the upside. So just be careful. Just watch all these moves. Watch all these plays carefully and be patient and wait for your proper technical setups. Right. Keep an eye on the defensive sectors. Keep an eye on the Qs. Keep an eye on the ES. Watch the Russ. Just watch. You'll know if you should be getting in short or if you should be avoiding shorting these tickers at different levels, right? Or if you should wait for a pullback to short off of. So we're at the 257s to the upside. We have 261, 264. Definitely watch this 267 area if we pull back. If we do not, if we sell through the 254s, watch the 247s by the 244s. If that area sells through, then these lower levels definitely will be opened up, the 240s, 238s, and 236s. Apple. We're trying to catch a bid here at the 131s. So remember this area here, right? The 138s, the beautiful area here that we rejected here and then rejected here, right? Once we bought through here, we definitely wanted this extension. Once we sold back through, look at this. The buyers did try. And then we rejected the 142s and down we came. Nice sell. Now, the 131s, there are a lot of people that are going to watch these 131s into the 127.40s for buyers. For me, I'll see if we sell through these levels. If we don't hold the 131s, I'll probably be fading this to the lower level of the 127.70s just to see how this plays out, right? If the buyers step in and pushes back up, I want to see what happens at the 134s. Do we buy through that area or do the sellers push us back down, right? And don't be surprised if we get some sideways action, and because that's possible too. These have been some big waves, right? Big waves, big up, big down. So don't be surprised if we get some sideways consolidation. That's possible also. Just wait for this to play out. Wait to see if the sellers are going to push us down lower, or if we may get some sideways consolidation, or if the buyers try to run us back up. If the buyers step in immediately on Monday, I'm not trusting that. I'm going to be looking for an area to fade. So I'll be very careful trying to buy the quote unquote dip with the current market sentiment. You got to be able to check, sort of, what's the word? Be aware of the temperature in the room. So I want to see if we do buy back up, are we blowing through levels? And then I'll wait for a pullback, and I may play that. But for me personally, I need an up wave, a pullback, then a higher high. Then I'm interested. Initial up wave, initial pushback up. I'm looking for the sellers to step in, and then I want to ride that bad boy back down. That's just me personally and what I'm looking for. We'll see how it plays out. And also depends on what ticker you're in, right? If you're in one of these blue chips, one of the FANG stocks, then I'm going to be looking for a pullback and then lower low. If we gap down, all bets may be off. Microsoft, nice pullback here. I was using pivots up here. I didn't put any lines in, and I'll probably put some lines in later. But if we hold above the 231s, we could get a pull back up. I'll be watching to see if we go through the 229s. Excuse me. And then fade into the 221s and then lower. I'm going to be careful on Microsoft. Their numbers were good. So what I'll be watching for is honestly for this to sell down into an area where I believe the buyers may want to step in and ride this into the next earnings. Their numbers were pretty good. So we'll see how this shakes out. But on this selling, right? What you want to do is, okay, this is just an idea. What you may want to do, this selling, for those that were shaking out of your positions, I know it doesn't feel great, but what you want to keep an eye on is for these stocks that reported well and had great earnings and great guidance, you do want them to pull back a little bit, right? And if they sell down into strong value areas, you do wish to step in because they guided well. Their numbers aren't changing because of the market sentiment. These are still good companies. You just want to get them at a slight discount, right? You want a lower price because they will buy back up. Unless we're going into a recession, these things will buy back up. And so what you want to do is, okay, I won't tell you. What I would recommend is keep an eye open for value areas where you feel safe getting in and you feel comfortable getting in and you wouldn't mind owning it at that level. That's my recommendation. Intel. So Intel is sort of right at the bottom of this little channel that I kind of like we did before. We'll see if Intel can head back up. They did what they typically do, right? And we talked about this last time, dipped on earnings. That's what Intel does. But once it consolidates, we see that it rises again. And I'll watch Intel to see what it does. If it continues to sell, that's fine. What I would do on Intel personally, I'm going to wait until it's settled at a level and it consolidates for a few days, and then I'll look for a buying opportunity. Isn't this fascinating that while everything else was just selling and making, low moves, Intel, by the time, the news came out, was in a different place, right? Maybe the investors in Intel were like, hey, this already sold to levels where we're comfortable and we're going to wait for this to consolidate and we're going to ride this back up because you didn't see a similar, you look at this chart pattern, you don't see a similar selling in Intel that we saw in some of the other tickers. So this will be interesting to watch on Intel going forward. Is will it be stronger than some of the other tickers, or will it sell with them? We'll see if the other tickers sell. So keep an eye on Intel, see if it's settled out, and would you just watch for a few weeks and see if it's settled out, and you can write it back up for a week or so. But if this sells, watch the 5350s. And if we sell through that, if we don't hold this little hitch here, this little flare down in the 5269 area, then we do want to watch, keep an eye out for the 5111s. We'll see how this plays out on Intel. I will be setting some alerts and I will be playing this to the downside, or if we get a little pop, maybe to the upside. But I'll be careful in Intel just to see which direction it goes. We'll see. GOOS, nice pullback here. Now that we're at the 33 20s, I'm watching out for the 3028s. Maybe we're headed back down to this area. Earnings is coming up on the 5th of February. That should be interesting. We will see. Um, Look at this area. Multiple days, buyers stepped in. If we drift below this area, we'll see if we get a leak down to the 3230s. That might be interesting. I might definitely be watching for that. Maybe we go lower. So this may be interesting as far as what's going on GOOS. Have to wait and see how that plays out. But I do like that little chart setup there. CMG. Um, Playing this with pivots, I do like CMG a lot. Um, CMG, yes, we saw movement, but it has more strength than the other tickers that sold. For some strange reason, CMG is not selling. Earnings are coming up. Maybe people feel that they're going to beat. CMG and McDonald's are very interesting. I think they've done pretty well during the pandemic because they're brands that people do tend to gravitate to. They're comfort foods, right? Burritos are comfort food. Is a comfort food. McDonald's is a comfort food for people. So I do think that CMG may beat earnings. We'll see. We'll watch how this plays out. It usually moves $70+ on earnings. That's what I remember. There've been a few that have been muted, but the majority have been, just these massive moves. So we'll see if we're making new highs here. I'll draw some lines on this. I didn't take the time to do it because I was utilizing the at least it's pivots, right? And that's what whenever something makes these levels that are above my retracement lines, that's what I use. I use pivots, and I'll be using EMAs and things of that nature to make sure I play these levels. But CMG has been interesting, and I will be keeping an eye on this, especially with earnings coming up. McDonald's had earnings, didn't react the way that I thought it would, but what we want to remember is these 206s. We see this flare down, but these 206s, this channel that it's been in, it's been pretty strong. So what I'm watching for is a close below the 206 or a close above the 216s, and I'm interested. This in between area, you could almost have, sold and played a strategy here, or bought and played a strategy here, expecting it to close within this area, just all through this time, all the way back to December. So we'll see how this plays out. I'm waiting for a close above or below this area, and I will be playing that direction. And if it pulls back into the area and the following day it's still within that area, then I'll be closing out that trade. We'll see how that plays out. Just had an issue with my mic, but I do like where we are here, and we'll see if we get extensions below this, or if the buyers step in and push us back to the top of this area around the 216.95s and break. Tesla being Tesla, nice, beautiful pullback here. I believe we may go lower, but we'll see. The 780s was a beautiful area on Tesla. Buyer stepped in, pushed us back up a bit. We couldn't get through the 803s, I believe, on that push back up. I wanted the 815s to fade, ended up sort of playing that mid area. But we'll see if there's more selling in Tesla. If we make a lower low through the 780s, the 760s, I believe, is another area to keep an eye on. But what I will be watching for is if we get drift and the market sentiment remains weak, people may want to get this at a lower price. We'll see if that's the case. If that's the case, I wouldn't mind just going back down here around the 650s. That'd be beautiful. But we have to see. Don't preempt, don't guess. It will tell you if we sell below the 780s, then keep an eye out for the 760s, and we might be drifting down to the 713s. I mean, and we have to see if we gap down. If the buyers step in, you do want to see a buy through the 803s, which did provide a little bit of, I'll say, of a supply pocket on Friday. And you want to see us go through the 819s, and you want us to catch a bid and squeeze through the 850s. That's what you'd want to see. If we get sideways consolidation, just wait for Tesla to declare direction. ZM. Isn't this funny? Now, what did we say? If we dipped, watch for a buy and where the 360s. Check the videos. What did we get? A buy in the 360s, but we are below the 375s. If we drift down below the 360s, then watch out for the 346s to come up next. And then below that, we may see a hitch in the 320s. We'll see how that plays out on ZM. Um, all the different theories of how this may react as the vaccine is rolled out. We've mentioned in previous videos. Please go back and check those out if you want to get into that. We do have a what did I say? Where you can go through and select your ticker. We have the title and the breakdown to show you where each ticker is. Sort of what point do we talk about that ticker? So if you want to hear, sort of read up on ZM, go back our last 3 or 4 videos, and you can um, uh, fast forward to that part of the video and just listen to ZM if you're really interested in that. But we'll see how this plays out. For me, I am not going to be long this until we break over the 401s. And then I want to see it squeeze into the 420s. The 410s may provide a hitch. Where we are right now, we need to hold above the 375s, in my opinion, and break the 395s. We didn't do that. So I'm more bearish than not on this, thinking that we may drift lower into the 340s, but we have to break the lower 360s for that to happen. We'll see how that plays out on ZM. CI, nice sell from these upper 220s, and the air was thin, right? And each time that we've been in these areas, these upper 220s, the air gets thin, we retrace down. We did bounce here off of the 200 MA, pull back, hit the 222.80s, which was an area that we did struggle to break through first test. Now we have to see if we do hold the 215s and if the buyers step in. I believe that Joe Biden did make a statement about opening back up the health care marketplace on the federal side. And so that may provide a little bit of rise to this heading into earnings. So we have to see. We did get a bid on this and a bid on Humana. Hopefully I'm saying that right. HUM is the ticker around off of the 378, which is the level that we have marked. That gave us a nice rise into the 390s. So what we want to see, in my opinion, is does this continue, right? Can they buy us back above the 222.80s? If so, we might get a squeeze through this top. If we can hold above the 215s headed into earnings, and we'll see if we can, then there may be some interesting action in CI if they pop this top and we make some all-time highs. So that'll be interesting. Keep an eye on healthcare because there's, the things that Joe Biden, is mentioning, healthcare is definitely going to move in one direction or the other. But the move, in my opinion, will be pronounced. Whirlpool earnings sold. If you remember in the last video, I did mention that it'd be hard to imagine that durable good orders would be good during a pandemic, but hey, we were right. Worked out. What are we watching for here? Let's see if we catch a bid back into the 187s. I don't know if that's going to be the case, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a rise from here right into the 189s, this area below the 200, and then if we sold. So we'll see how that plays out. But that's what I'm watching for on Whirlpool. I probably will be playing this name this week. I just want to see if we can get like another back test. But this is looking, this may have been the back test here, right off the 200, and maybe we're going to sell. But this is just such a steep sell. I'm wondering if we're going to see a little bit of a buyback up here. Um, and then we have to see where the market sentiment is, right? Because if the market is, if things are going to be opening back up, right, I would expect durable good orders to potentially increase. But you do want this to be at a lower level before you would step in my opinion. We'll see how this shakes out, right? So I'll definitely be watching Whirlpool. FedEx, we were watching for a buy off these 243s, right? And so a drift below that, it did give us a little bit of a pop, um, but we rolled. So what are we looking for now on FedEx? I think the 231s are interesting and that we may drift lower. A few of the people that are actually trading this ticker do believe we may drift lower. Earnings is on the horizon. Um, but actually, no, it's not. It's in March. So, man, this may be good for earnings run. We have to see how this plays out. But nah, I'm more bearish on this than not. Being that we didn't hold the 243 area, I'm a little bit more bearish on this. Like it'd have to get over 243s for me to be interested in being long on FedEx right now, or have to drift down to these lower levels. Next level I have is 231, then the 215s. I will be looking to potentially be short this. We'll see what we do at the 231 area. If we, buy back up, I would love to see a buy back up in the 243s and then for us to fail, right? But the 258 was the area that I was waiting for us to break above for a long or a drop into the 243s. So this is definitely really interesting. We'll see how FedEx plays out, but this does not look good on the 4 hour. Just looking at the higher time frame, 231s look like that's the next stop. Goldman Sachs, financial selling. I love it. We did see that this looks interesting. Um, we found some buying around the 270 hole. Um, Me personally, I think we're going lower. 262s, 255s, maybe. I think we're going lower on financials on Goldman Sachs. That is what I think. We'll see how this plays out this upcoming week. But even if we pop, I will be looking for a short position. I don't see a reason for banks to be running back up at this moment. We'll see, right? But banks are going to make their money either way. I'm just thinking that the investors in some of these equities may be wanting to get these at a lower level. Not that they don't see value in it, but that they may want a lower value area and they may want to get in and be able to ride this through 2021 if they can. We'll see. The SPY, we are retracing and we're through the 200 MA. We want to see if the buyers step in here. Previous pullbacks, you've seen the levels where the buyers have stepped in, and 374s were below. So I'll be watching this personally. Let's see, 367s, 364s, 362s. Those are the levels to watch. Um, but I'll wait. I'll definitely be careful and I'll be waiting. If you like this video, please don't hesitate to click on the like button or tap that like button for us. And if you would like to receive more content like this, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, Power of Pivots, where you can look forward to receiving not just content from me, but content from Elisa as she shows you how she utilizes her power of pivot strategy and script and software that she created to find great entries and exits pre-market, RTH retail hours, post market, and to find great swing trades. She does a wonderful job of explaining and showing how to utilize that script. It's definitely wonderful. Thank you so much for your time. Please be very careful, be very patient. No matter how you feel emotionally, right? Emotions are dangerous, which is how do they say emotions are treacherous. Emotions are dangerous in the market, whether you're a fundamental trader or if you're a technical trader. Doesn't matter what you use. Make sure that your decisions are data driven. Don't let your emotions run you. Don't let your gut tell you, hey, I'm going to do this. Make sure your emotions are data driven and it's process over results. If you have a process and you don't like the results, you can alter parts of the process to get the adequate results. But if you have no process, you're just results oriented, then it's going to be hard because you're driven by your emotions and feelings and the results, right? So if you make money doing something, then you may think you should keep doing that same thing. But if you don't have a process behind it, it's hard to repeat success. Build out your system, focus on your process, right? Work that process, work that system. If you don't have something that's working, find something that is. Success leaves clues. Thanks again. Have a wonderful week of trading.